Okay, jumping back in on this Dr. Phil interview with Burke. Just kind of continuing to look for some things that I was concerned about in terms of what he was saying versus what his parents were saying in their interview. So let's jump right in.
Your voice was heard saying, "What did you find?" Did you speak those words?
Autopsy results did find undigested pineapple in JonBenet's stomach.
Did you and she eat pineapple together at any time during the day?
Maybe.
The lead investigator says one of the reasons that he believes that you are the culprit here is that on the day of your sister's murder, you never asked about her welfare.
Want to send a special shout out to Basil 206 for the $2 contribution. Thank you, Basil. Really appreciate it. You know, I gotta give you some love. Can't run away. You just gotta take it. So I gotta give you a hug. Appreciate you. Much love. And I hope you enjoy the next video. Thank you.
What did JonBenet's young brother reveal to investigate?
The police did talk to him, unbeknownst to the Ramsey family.
It's been 20 years. What I'd like to do is show you some footage from that interview. Nobody in the world has seen this before.
The never-before-seen interrogation tapes of Burke Ramsey.
He thought, well, I must be lying. Therefore, I'm lying about other things.
I didn't put the ball there. Okay, I did not put the ball there. I would not do that.
This principal wants to.
They did. You sure?
Fingerprints on the bowl are Patsy's, according to police, suggesting that she's the one who gave the fruit to her daughter. But if Patsy did give it to JonBenet and is lying about it, then investigators wondered, could she be lying about everything?
Do you remember drinking the iced tea around Christmas time?
Yeah.
What does food or stuff?
What was more interesting?
And just on that point, like we talked about before, first of all, Patsy only admitted to Burke. First of all, John sort of contradicted himself in the same interview in 1998 by saying, I don't even think my kids drink tea. You know, Patsy drinks tea. She doesn't drink hot tea, but she drinks iced tea. And I don't even think the kids drink tea. Then he came back and said, well, I think Burke drinks tea, you know, but, you know, and Patsy said to add to that, Patsy said, well, no, I wouldn't put it in a glass cup like that. I'd probably just put it in a pot and let it steep and then kind of maybe put some sugar in it. And she never really talked about pouring it. You know, she never really talked about how she would pour it, but she just said, no, I wouldn't put the tea bag in the glass. But the thing about it is, and she also said that Burke probably would do it. Burke would probably drink the tea around summertime, essentially in that range. But Burke comes and says, no, I drink it around Christmas time. You know, I think I had it actually the Christmas party yesterday. Oh, the Christmas party. Well, wouldn't the Christmas party be like the same day that JonBenet was supposedly missing? Just like around that time? Not only that, wouldn't the Christmas party be just a couple of hours before JonBenet went missing? Confused.
Was that next to that bowl, there was a glass of tea. And on that glass of tea was Burke's fingerprints.
Would you leave it there for longer? Like, I mean, is there other times when maybe the dishes don't get cleaned the right way? Or do they simply?
Did you and she eat pineapple together at any time?
And so before he says this, he confirmed what Patsy said. Patsy said, you know, I cleaned up the table pretty quickly. I think I cleaned the table when I was cleaning the table up for breakfast that day. You know, there was no pineapple and tea on the table. I cleaned it up. At least she said about the pineapple. She said, when I was cleaning up, we had pancakes. We didn't have pineapple with pancakes. I don't think we had anything between the time that we went to the White House and the pancakes. So I don't remember cleaning up any pineapple or what have you at the table. If it was there, I would have cleaned it up. And then Burke comes back and says, yeah, we clean things up pretty fast around there. So if it was there on that table, I would have seen it. So because what's happening here is we're having to push the timeline back to say, okay, it wasn't at Pasta. You guys went to Pasta J's on Christmas Eve. You didn't have any pineapple that day. Guys woke up at breakfast, didn't have any pineapple. Guys woke up here, didn't have any, guys, after breakfast or what have you, or during breakfast, didn't have any pineapple. When exactly did you have it?
Not during the day.
Maybe. Like, I don't remember specifically eating pineapple, but very well could have. Like, would you remember eating pineapple 20 years ago?
But that doesn't matter because your mom said she didn't serve you any pineapple that day. So how would you remember possibly having pineapple? Because your mom said, I ain't served them any pineapple.
Like,
There was a flashlight and a baseball bat found at the house, and the investigators thought one of those could have caused JonBenet's head.
JonBenet did suffer a severe 8.5 inches along the right side of her. The things that could have been possibly used were maybe a metal flashlight, baseball bat. The baseball bat was found outside. It also had fibers from the carpet that was in the basement where JonBenet was found.
Did they show you either of those items?
They showed me a picture of the baseball bat, like on the side of the house or something.
Yeah.
Is there anything strange about it being out there to you? And you find it odd that it's out there?
That was my baseball bat. I would normally like leave it out on the patio.
So an intruder could have picked that up on the way in.
Yeah.
I think your dad had said he used the flashlight that night to put you to bed, and then you snuck downstairs to play.
Yeah, I had some toy that I wanted to put together. I remember being downstairs after everyone was kind of in bed and wanting to get this thing out.
Did you use the flashlight so you wouldn't be seen?
I don't remember. I just remember being downstairs. I remember this toy.
Did you hit your sister over the head with—
Oh. See, sometimes when you don't know what you're talking about and you don't corroborate statements, that seems like a very innocent thing to say. But it ain't. Now, in terms of the baseball bat, they weren't really sure. John Ramsey kind of said that he thought that Burke had a bat, and then JonBenet had a little plastic bat. And I think Patsy said the same thing. JonBenet had like a little wiffle ball bat or something like that. And then the discussion, I think this was in 2000, came up later about, was it in 2000? Yeah, it was in August of 2000 with John. The discussion came up later about a second baseball bat, which was an aluminum bat. And they told John at that time that through the grand jury, Burke said it was his, I believe. But John said he never saw that bat, so he wasn't aware of a second baseball bat. Now, Patsy comes in before that, I think in her 98 interview, because I don't think either one of them mentioned anything about a bat in 1997. Neither were they asked about one in 1997. But Patsy said she believed that Burke had one metal bat, noting that metal bats are not cheap, and she couldn't imagine him having more than one. And so Burke is coming in saying that, yeah, there was a second bat, and so Burke may have had two. And so in terms of where the bats were left around the house or the yard, I think they're pretty consistent. John indicated that it would not be unusual for Burke's bat to be left in the backyard after batting practice, as it would just be dropped where it was used. Because he was basically saying that we have, batting practice out here in the backyard. So, we just kind of leave it out there, and the yard stretches back this way. Apparently they had like a pond back there in the yard, which is pretty cool. So when shown the photograph of a bat found, so there were like the two bats. I think there was a bat found, which is
used the flashlight that night.
Strange about it being out there to you?
Basement where JonBenet was found.
Did they show you either of those items?
They showed me a picture of the baseball bat, like on the side of the house or something.
Yeah.
So they were like bats in two different locations. I think one was on the south end and one was in the area of the north window. And I think the north was like because Lou Smith mentioned something about one on the south end, but I think the north was behind the butler's kitchen, which is not by the patio actually at all. The butler's kitchen is actually on the opposite side of the house. It has like concrete or like, it has, concrete, like a little thing of concrete, but I'm not sure, it has like a little lip of like concrete or whatever. I think beyond this, from what I could tell, from what I was seeing of what Paula Woodward posted, but that's not the patio I think they're talking about. But this is the one by the north window near the downspout, which is I guess somewhere around here. And so in this case, John sort of stated that the bat doesn't belong there, doesn't recall ever seeing the bat in that specific spot. Patsy also found the presence of the bat in the photograph. I think it was 410, because John was saying this in terms of photograph 410, also looking at 410 of the bat on the north side of the house by the butler's kitchen door. Patsy said that was very unusual, or it was unusual, very strange. She noted that while the children often leave their toys around, it wouldn't have been over on the north side, because that's the opposite side of the patio. Patsy goes on to clarify that the kids' toys, including bats, would typically be found in the area of the swing set or the patio. She added that there's not much space on the north side for playing baseball. They usually played closer to the patio or the dining room, which the dining room is kind of closer to the breakfast nook there. I think you go through the breakfast nook where the pineapple bowl and the tea bag was found over to the dining room. So if like you're if I'm remembering correctly, I could be wrong, but if you're in the breakfast nook, you're looking at the kitchen straight ahead and your back is like sort of to the outside. You're looking at the kitchen straight ahead, and to your right is going to be the dining area, I believe is what that is. And so Patsy goes on to say that it would be unusual for the bat to be in the basement area. She had no memory of one being down there, but she did acknowledge that it was possible that one of the boys may have bought the bat inside the house. And in terms of how the bat was used, John said, batting practice in the backyard. JonBenet had a little plastic bat with little wiffle balls. I said the same thing. I think just in terms of like baseball in general, when we're asking about Burke having a black eye, I think John is recounted as saying Burke was like an outfielder or something like that, and he was playing baseball, and the ball came down, and he got hit accidentally in that case. But one of the things that was interesting, and I can kind of move to the specific interviews, is at some point in time, I think in either John's, because it's across these, in 2000, we'll go ahead and knock that one out, because that's not very long at all. When they were just talking about the baseball bat, there are a couple, Ollie Gray, there are a couple of others we followed up on, but not him, just talking about in terms of somebody, I guess, Dennis Kelly, following up on some guy or for some reason or another. Mr. Levin, Mr. Ramsey, you mentioned Dorothy Allison provided you with a name. I missed it. So the witness says, and this is the 2000 interview with John. The witness says, a woman who had seen her on television provided us with the name of something. I said, I can give you what she sent, but I don't. Mr. Levin comes in. Was that on the list that you gave us, the name? John says, no, wasn't a name on the list that I gave you. Question comes in and says, if I can change gears for just a second, one of the things that you found significant, and obviously since you found it significant, it was great interest to us, was the baseball bat, the second baseball bat, aluminum bat. And we have, through confidential grand jury investigations, found that The second bat was Burke's. Was there anything else you thought about assuming that it's true or that is true? And then John says, well, I've never seen the bat, so I think the best person to ask who it belongs to or not is to ask Burke. And this is kind of a really, it's honestly the same thing Patsy said. So in terms of the bat, Lou Smith is saying, do you remember when you checked that? Talking about checking the doors and stuff like that. Do you remember you checked that? John says, not specifically in your mind. First of all, you felt like you've been hit in with a baseball bat in your stomach and your mind is just going mad. So it was a crazy time. And so it's interesting that, as we're getting ready to talk about a baseball bat, and go more in depth about a baseball bat, John Ramsey pulls to the front and says, it feels like you've been hit in the stomach. And instead of saying something like a gut punch, like you've been hit in the stomach with a gut punch, he says a baseball bat. It's like, oh, it's quite an interesting example that you might use. And so he's, it feels like you've just been hit with a baseball bat. So they go down here a little bit more to kind of, what have you. And blah, blah, blah. Lou Smith says, okay, I'm going to show you some more photographs. And do you remember whether your children played baseball or bats or anything of that nature? John says, used. I mean, Burke played baseball. We used to play, have batting practice in the backyard. And so Lou goes on to ask, do you know if there was one bat, two bats, or three bats? Do you have any idea? John says, well, I think Burke had a bat, and then JonBenet had a little plastic bat, a small one that she would use, little wiffle balls and stuff like that. And then they go on to Lou Smith says, I'm going to show you a picture. And again, this photograph 434, photograph of a bat, and it appears to be in the yard. And this is a close up of the same bat. And I would like to know, to show you both pictures. And it's for photograph 435. John says, well, that sort of looks like Burke's bat. I could probably tell exactly if it was or not, but I could probably tell exactly if it was or not, but looks familiar. It wouldn't be unusual for it to be lying out in the yard because it just kind of got dropped where it was. And this is kind of, this is consistent with, what the kids do with their clothes. They just drop them places. Patsy said, JonBenet would just drop her clothes places and whatnot. And so continuing to go, I think 410 was one of them. Going to show you another bat. It's a photograph number 410. This was found in a different location, and I will show you a picture. So we have a bat over here that is sort of in the yard, and it's just dropped in the yard. Now, the interesting thing is that this is more aligned with where the kids would be playing in the yard. So that bat, if anything, we would be more inclined to believe that that bat belonged to Burke. And John Ramsey says, it's hard for me to tell whether it's similar, but Luke goes on to say, do you know what area of the house this is? And John says, looks like it. I know what it is. It is there. It's here. It's probably right in here. So the sort of the area of the north window. And John Ramsey says, right. Right. This downspout came down right here, right there. No, over here. Well, yeah, it was here, but that's definitely in this area. So Lou says, do you ever recall seeing a bat there? John says, no, that doesn't belong there. When we played baseball, we played right out here because that's the only place you could hit a ball. And that yard kind of stretched back this way. But, I don't know where that bat, where there would be a bat there. And so they kind of go on down. Lou says, I want to show you a series of photographs from the same area. And I'd like you to take a look at these photographs. They are numbered 234, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, and 41. These are photographs that were taken at the crime scene of the area of the window. And that's the north bathroom window into the home. And I would like to show you these. And they kind of continue to go down to the first floor. I think this is the end of his discussion about the bat, I believe. Yeah. And so Patsy has some discussions around the bat herself. And this is kind of when we were talking about Patsy dreaming. And so Patsy is coming out to say that this is how I'm dealing right now with everything that's going on. So she says, well, I don't know that you can forget. I mean, every morning, I think this is supposed to be morning, I open my eyes and it's right there. You know, a lot of times when I'm dreaming and thinking, I'm trying to figure out who did it. I'm chasing somebody down the corridor. But, you know, Burke's in school and we have, you know, the most homework in his activities. He's on the baseball team in the spring. And, you know, I was the team mother and, you know, went to all his games. And and we made some new friends. We certainly have a lot of old friends that we've known for years, but, you know, particularly found a couple with the only son. And so our two boys kind of hit it off. I and the mom, and then the dads enjoy each other. So we go to dinner probably once a week. Um, just, you know, and, you know, my new little niece was born in September. So I helped Polly take care of, you know, my new niece quite a bit. And so it's sort of day to day, you know, there's no really no game plan. And so that's kind of, you know, Burke's in baseball. So all of those training sessions in the backyard are paying off. And so Tripp says, if you walk past the laundry room, the shower to the storage is the end of the hallway, the room it would be in. And Patsy says, right here, there'd kind of be kind of a beard, but I don't know if it was made out of cotton. I guess they're talking about like a Santa beard. It was kind of more synthetic. That was the Santa suit was never in the windowsill. Patsy Ramsey says, not to my knowledge. So looking at 410, this is the baseball bat by the butler's kitchen. That looks like a baseball bat. What is that? It looks like, and Tripp says it is on that photograph was taken on the north side of this up by the butler kitchen door. Was it the Givens that lived on that side of the house? And Patsy said, oh, really? That's unusual. That is unusual. And Tripp says, why is that? Patsy said, it's not unusual for the kids to leave their stuff lying around, but they wouldn't have it over there. It would have been, remember, all the toys laying under the swing set. Yeah, Patsy's saying this. It would be that area. So that is very unusual. They never looked. And so Tripp is saying they never took their toys to that side of the house. Patsy says nobody hardly ever went over there. They were living there. So Tom says, okay, the boys. Patsy Ramsey says, run around. I know. And so Tom Haney says, would they ever end up playing over there? Or do you know, is there any place they wouldn't go outside? And Patsy says, well, you're right. There's probably no place they wouldn't go, but it would be highly unusual is what I'm saying for a baseball bat to be there because there's not much space over there. I mean, if they hit a ball and a bat, it was usually over where the patio is, you know, the lake. And so they had that. I think that's that little pond that they have, the lake there along the dining room window, that area. And so Tom Haney says, how about the bat itself? Does that look? And then Patsy says, well, I can't say for sure. Burke probably would know. Tom Haney says, do you know how many bats he might have had? Would he have had more than one? Patsy says, I don't think so. I mean, I think it looks metal. Metal bats are pretty, I mean, they're not cheap. So I can imagine, I don't think he had more than one if he had one. We're talking about Patsy Ramsey saying metal bats are not cheap. Patsy Ramsey is the queen of spending money. You would not care, and John is making money. It was reported, I think, by Vanity Fair that they said, we love spending John Ramsey's money. So you would not be worried about money, like at all. Like that'd be the furthest thing from a metal bat. In looking at the LA Times article on April 30 of 1996, just a little excerpt says money is the main reason aluminum bats are used. Quality aluminum bats cost between $100 to $170, but they usually come with a 1-year warranty. But quality wooden bats cost between like $30 and $60. So kind of saying the staff writer is kind of showing that will Little League, high school, or college baseball ever swing back to using wooden bats? Not unless someone comes up with a wooden bat that is equal in performance and durability to the aluminum models. Start with economics. Quality aluminum bats cost between $100 to $170, but they usually come with a 1-year warranty. Quality wooden bats, maybe not so much. No guarantees against breakage. Most people who buy wood bats are in adult baseball leagues, said Larry Cregan, manager of the Orange Sporting Goods. They'll use it for the nostalgia, the difference in the sound of a hit. Some people just like it, but we don't sell many of them. You can hit wood one time and it breaks. Certain alloy aluminums could last a high school career. Most of the time, the bat should last a couple of years, but with aluminum, the first time you hit with it is the most powerful. After that, with each hit, it loses some pop. Then there's performance. Aluminum is superior to wood because it is lighter and can be swung faster, resulting in balls being driven farther. In addition, aluminum bats have a greater hitting area than wood. You don't have to hit the ball solely on the sweet spot for success. So these are all really good things. These are all really good reasons. So the bat is expensive. In 1996, April 30, earlier in that year, LA Times is saying like it's like $170. So that's pretty expensive. But you got to remember, Patsy's putting on parties for like 30, 40 grand at sometimes. Patsy's making upgrades to her house for like 700 grand sometimes. And John is just letting it happen. They have 2 or 3 houses. They have a house in Atlanta. They have a house that they're currently living in Boulder, Colorado. They have boats. They have beauty pageants. They have planes. I think 2 planes at the time. And though John is leasing one of them at least to kind of make his money back on it, like you still have 2 planes. And you have a lake house, of course, in Charlevoix in Michigan. You got a lake house there. You travel quite a lot. So there's a lot of money going in and out. And so $170, and Patsy is, she's a PTA mom. And so there's a lot of money going in and out. So $170 for at least one bat, or 100, I'd say maybe like the average or what have you, 100 some odd dollars that you're going to spend on a bat. Probably throw down 200, 250 bucks, something like that for a bat. And you say, hey, you got 2, one for practice, one for, the actual games, or just in case you lose one. We want to make sure that you have what you need. And so Patsy and John strike me as that kind of, as those kinds of parents. So metal bats are pretty, they're not cheap. So I can imagine, I don't think we had more than one. If he had one, Tom says, but he did have one. And Patsy says, it seems like he had one, but I can't say for sure if it was one. Like I said, he would know. I'm sure he would know. He might know if they ever played over there, but the bat seems weird to me. Yeah, very strange. And I can't imagine what is this? Like a bench or something? Where is this? Now, the interesting thing about this is, like, when you compare this answer to her answer that she gave about the high-tech boot, the answers are very similar. She didn't know if she bought Burke some high-tech boots. Yet, Patsy, and in this instance, and they kind of left it at that, but in this instance, Patsy and John will attest to the fact, at least John will attest to the fact that Burke is in baseball. We have him in baseball. We practice with him. He's in batting practice, so on and so forth. But I don't know if I bought him a bat or not. I don't know if this bat belongs to him or not. And it's like, it seems like you would know. Now you just pull him a leg. It seems like you would know what bat that you bought your son. He plays baseball. You guys play baseball with him all the time. Are you telling me that okay, let me ask you this. What kind of car do you drive? Because it seems to me that the way that you guys reason, your logic is, I don't know I can't remember what kind of car I bought. But all I know is I get in the car and I just start it up. It starts up and I just drive to work. People honk at me and say, hey, nice Jeep. And I say, what Jeep? I don't know what Jeep you're talking about. I'm not riding in a Jeep. Because I don't know. I don't know what I'm driving. I forgot. You asked me about a car that I'm driving 2 years later. I know what car I was driving. I wish you would have asked me when I pulled it off the lot, because I knew back then. But you asked me about what car I'm driving 2 years later. I can't tell you that. That's the answers that John and Patsy and Burke at this point are giving. So this answer, this answer is very similar to the shoes answer when they asked about the high tech boots, and Patsy was like, "Oh, I don't know if we bought him high tech boots or not. I wouldn't know that. I don't know." Basically the same thing. Oh, I don't know if we bought him a bat or not. I know we bought him a bat. I know he played baseball, but I don't know if that's a bat. It's very unusual, very strange for it to be over there. It's like, you have kids. You know you have kids. Kids go everywhere. Kids experience everything. Kids are in places. It's normal for a kid to be in places that they're not supposed to be all the time. So basically, Patsy says that she doesn't know. Patrick Burke jumps in and says it looks a little side. Tom Haney says, I think it's sort of the edging of the house. Patsy Ramsey says when they quit playing, they throw it on the ground. I can't imagine anybody would be neat enough to lay it up on anything like that if they were over there. That just doesn't, that is something. And then Tripp says, who played baseball with Burke in your yard? They got to leave these Colby kids alone. They really do. You got to leave them alone. You got to leave them alone. Patsy Ramsey says Evan, mostly Evan. The guy from next door, that was occasionally over there, Scott, on our side or their side. I don't know. Tripp Demus says, do they have their own baseball stuff they brought over? Patsy Ramsey says, I don't know. I don't pay that much attention. And Tom Manny says, okay. Patsy Ramsey says, did anybody take handprints off of that? Do you know? And then Tom Haney says, I believe it was recovered. Tripp says, we have that. Yeah. And Patsy says, because that looks like that just doesn't. And Tom Haney says that was 410. Now we move on to 413, which is just the Boulder police photo ID. And then 414, Patsy Ramsey says, didn't we see this yesterday? I think they're getting back to the bowl of the pineapple and stuff like that. But my thing is, you're kind of throwing somebody else in the mix. Now, I understand they asked her a question about who's over there, but this constant bringing up of Evan, I think one of the Colby kids, and I think it was Evan, is the one that John said, oh, Evan was being nasty and, he was being weird with JonBenet and I had to break him up from that, or I had to, stop him from doing that. And then, what was the other time? Because it was where Evan was being nasty again, around the corner with Burke. And, he was telling Burke that Burke can use the restroom outside and you just kind of, whip it out and there it is. And so Evan is caught up in like some of the worst stories with respect to the Ramsey kids. And I'm not saying he didn't do those things. I don't know the guy. I've never met the guy. I've never seen him, never met the kid. So I don't know, maybe he did those things. Maybe he didn't, but he's coming up again. It's like he's coming up again. And so they say, okay, they go through the glass with the tea bag. Looks like ours. The glass looks like ours, and like you. So I hope you're keeping track with me. We don't even know if the glass belonged. We don't know for sure because the Ramseys aren't answering questions directly. We don't know for sure if the glass that they had came from the Ramsey house. It looks like it, but we don't know if this intruder bought their own tea glass. Are you kidding me? This is what I'm saying. Like it seems like we're starting to walk into untruthful territory, because when you can't even admit to a bowl or a glass being in your house, you can't even say, oh yeah, man, that's my car, man. I believe if they would have said something to the effect of, hey, this looks like your Jag or your Jeep down the street. Can you, and the license plate is registered to you. Can you take a look at that and just identify, make sure this car is yours? Oh, it looks like I had a car like that, same color, same license plate, same tires and everything, but my tires would have been put on in 1997 at this shop. And they say, well, yeah, we've confirmed all the parts and the tires on this car actually did come from that shop. We called and they said, yeah, they're the only people in town with these tires. So that would be your car. I don't know. Can't be for sure. Can't be certain. Not really certain. Does look like my car though. These are the kinds of answers that John and Patsy are giving. and you're upset that people are starting to call you a liar, because people who are kind of fed up with nonsense, they're going to go ahead and call you a liar, whether they have proof or evidence or not. They're going to go ahead and call you a liar, because we can't even ask you basic stuff like, your kid has a bat and you say you don't know what the bat looks like, and you play baseball with him quite frequently. If a kid came and took a baseball bat out of your yard, let me just say it like this. One time when I was little, somebody came in our backyard and stole our bikes, or stole my bike, or stole whatever. And it was actually a friend. It was actually a friend of ours, somebody who we were cool with. We would go to their house and play video games. Sometimes they'd come over to ours. But I think that it was the older brothers, that we really didn't have a relationship with. They're the ones who ended up taking it. But they came and just took the bikes right out of our backyard. Because at the time, man, we didn't really have, the gate wasn't really locked. You know what I mean? Like, we would lock the front. I mean, we'd lock the doors to the house, man, but the gates and stuff like that, we didn't really lock that and stuff like that. It was in the 90s, stuff like that. And we lived in a pretty good neighborhood. So when we went over there, though, I rode by the house and we came out. I was like, man, where's my bike? What happened to my bike, man? I set it right here. And, I was going around the neighborhood or something like that, walking or whatever I was doing. I was walking by and I was like, that looks like my bike. Because it was like, I think it was like a BMX or something like that. And it had a very distinct pattern. It was like a BMX or a Huffy. It had a very distinct pattern. I remember like a BMX that we had like it was like purple or something like that. It had like a purple pattern or something. So it was very distinct. And I was like, oh, this is my bike. And so I went home and told my parents, and one of my parents came back with me. I was like, no, that's my bike back there. It's like, no, it isn't. Because I think also too, what we did was on our bikes to kind of tell the difference between whose was whose. Because like maybe we all got the same bike. We would paint my dad, like, painted the handlebar with like some just basic spray paint. He would like do like green around your handlebar and pink around yours and stuff, or blue around yours, so whose bike it was and whatnot. I was like, yeah, this has a green spray paint around the handlebar. This is mine. And so my dad or my mom, whoever went with me, didn't stand there and like, oh man, it looks like it could be ours. I'm not sure for certain. Yeah, it has a green marking like it, but can't know for certain. It's a BMX, can't know for certain. And it's his size. Your son is dang near a grown man. He cannot ride this bike. So I can't know for certain, but kind of looks like ours. No, my dad was like, yeah, that's my kid's bike. It's my son's bike. And the mom was like, oh, I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. Please forgive my kids, this, that, and the third, blah, blah, blah. But like John, you would think parents would recognize their kids' stuff. You know what I mean? But consistently through this stuff, Patsy and John are just like, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know. That is weird. And so looking at outside photos, 4:34, the next photo, excuse me, the next photos begin here at 4:34. Patsy says yes. Oh, outside photos. Yes. There's not a baseball bat, or is that the same one? Going to the close-up, I believe, on the other side of the house. I think we went through all of these, I believe. Oh, no, we didn't. No, we didn't. Okay, so glass looks like ours. Okay, next, here's excuse me, photo 4:34. Here's a close-up with 4:35. I mean, is this the same bat as the one on the other side of the house? No, that's why we're here. So Tom Haney says, no, that's why we're here. And Tripp says, do you recognize this area? Patsy says, yes. Okay, where's this area in 4:34? Patsy says, this is the backyard. There's a little pond. We have water in it, Tripp says, off the patio. Patsy says, yeah, off the patio. More likely a bat would be here on the ground because it's more likely the general area where they play baseball than the other pitcher. So she's talking about it's more likely that the baseball bat would be out here in the yard than off the patio in the butler's kitchen. Okay. Well, I mean, it's right there on the grass. So part of the unusualness, Patsy is saying, of that other one, that it was somewhere neater than throwing it on the ground. It's like What kind of statement to say is that? Like the bat wasn't, the kids don't neatly throw the bat on the ground. The bat was laid on the ground neatly. It's like it doesn't look, it just looks like the bat is on the ground. It doesn't look like the bat was neatly placed over there. It just looks like the bat is on the ground. You know what I mean? Like, okay, so it was somewhere neater than throwing it on the ground. So Tom Haney says, okay, do you recognize that this particular bat? And so Patsy says, no, like I said, Burke would be the better one to know which was his bat and which wasn't. So if the bat is on the ground in the area where the kids would normally throw the bat, you still don't know if it's his bat or not? You've got to be kidding me. No, you should ask Burke. I'm asking you. You're the one who bought it. Do you know which bat you bought? This is crazy. You watch him play baseball. You got to be kidding me. So Tom Haney says, sure. And Patsy says, uh-huh. And Tom Haney says, and would you be able to distinguish one bat from another? And Patsy says, probably not. And so he says, okay, not a big baseball fan or softball player, right? She says, no. Okay. Tripp says, would you know if those bats or Burke's bats or anybody's bat for that matter would be allowed in the house? Wherever in the house do bats ever come inside? Patsy says, oh, I think if they would be in any part of the house, they would be in the garage, in the garage right there before, leaning up before you come in the door, because they're usually dirty. And I can never recall them being like up in the playroom or anything like that. Nobody asked you about the playroom. No one asked you about the playroom. I'm just asking if they'd be inside anywhere. Would they be inside anywhere? Why would you mention the playroom? Was there a bat in the playroom at some point in time? Okay. Because going from the garage to the playroom, like, that's crazy. Like, instead of saying, okay, this bat would never come past the garage, you wouldn't expect to find this in like the kitchen or upstairs or in our room. You wouldn't find it in the house. That's what I would expect the sentence to go like. But she mentioned the playroom exactly, and I was like, why would you mention the playroom? Exactly. What would that? Why? Why specifically? Why are you so specific about the playroom? So I can't ever recall it being there. Tripp says, do you have a rule against bringing the bats in the house? And Patsy says, no. Okay, so it's possible that one of the boys may have bought it in. Patsy says, well, yeah. Tripp says, do you remember any baseball bats ever being in the basement? And Patsy says, no. Tripp says, okay, anybody ever store them down in the basement? Patsy says, no. Not, they would never be in the garage. They would either be in the garage or out here somewhere, more than likely. So I've told you where they would be. These bats would never make their way in the house. I told you that. They should never be in the house. I don't have a rule against it, but I'm telling you, I'm quite certain these bats should never go past the garage, up in the playroom or anything. And so Tripp says, so you've never stored a baseball bat in the basement? And Patsy says, I can't say that I ever did. I can't remember. And Tripp says, okay, well, Patsy says, it would be unusual for me to put a baseball bat or anybody to put a baseball bat in the basement. Anybody. So we're going from me to it be unusual for anybody. So you got everybody on lockdown. John wouldn't do it. JonBenet wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it if I'm Patsy, and neither would Burke. Burke knows better than to bring any of these bats inside the house. They'd know better. The furthest they would bring this bat is right here to this garage and leave it, because those bats are dirty and they don't belong in the house. Okay. Do you have any memory of a baseball bat ever being? I want to know. Patsy says, no, I don't have a memory of a baseball bat being in the basement. Okay. So then they, kind of move on to other stuff, the basement TV and such as that. And that's sort of the extent to which, Patsy talks about the baseball bat. So if we look in, I think this is CBI report 62497 right here, CBI report, and it was submitted in 62497, completed September 8th of 97. One of the things that they tested, you have the paint tray, pants, golf club cover, Um, you have the hammer, you have the golf club on 319, and then you have on 320 the bat. And so fibers from JonBenet's hand, fibers from her shirt, fibers from her pillow. It's like 327. So really looking at 320, 327 and 8. 336 to 339. So none of it had any male body fluids, or I'm sorry, just any body fluids on it, any red fluids on it. 319 to 320 in terms of the golf club cover. 319 was the golf club, right? Yeah, 319 was just the golf club. So they had no male or they had no body fluids, and neither one of them had any red fluids. 321 and 22, toilet seat and the rope in the toilet seat. But what they did do was hair or fiber and or fiber controls were collected. Fiber control is from what I'm aware of is like you take like a piece of the material. Like if you have like a hammer, you know what I'm saying, you'll take like part of the hammer, like a scraping of the hammer to test and see if whatever you're looking at is consistent with that. And so basically you can take hair or fiber controls from these exhibits 307, 308, 9, 10, 11, 319, 20. So the golf club, the bat, and I think 21 is the rope. And then 7, 8, 9, 10, or basically 7 through 11. Pants, golf club, toilet paper, pants, and the sweater. Something they took hair or fiber or controls from. Now, to kind of tie this, to kind of close it down, when you look at, I think it's Chris Wolf's report, in terms of the fiber, when you look at Chris Wolf's report, Chris Wolf, well, no, I think so. If you look in Chris Wolf's civil lawsuit, and maybe I can find it here. I don't have it pulled up. Maybe I can find it somewhere. Oh, I actually do have it pulled up. This is, you can find this on Justia, Wolf versus Ramsey's 253F. I think it's supplemental 2D 1323 in D, Georgia, North District of Georgia, 2003. And so basically, U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Georgia, 253 F supplemental, or I'm saying supplemental, but F sup 2D, so on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. You get it. Robert Christian Wolf, plaintiff, JonBenet Ramsey and Patricia Paul Ramsey, defendants, United States District Court. This is March 31st of 2003. When we look at the bat, looking at page, I think it's around page 53 of 55. So closer to the end. No, let's go to the other one. Page 8. Finally, items were left behind that defendants assert they did not own. And so they're pulling from the defense's brief in the supplemental of summary judgment 67 at 18 through 19, where they said a baseball bat not owned by the Ramseys found on the north side of the house has fibers consistent with fibers found in the carpet in the basement where JonBenet was found. And that's coming from the defense's brief. So basically that's coming from John and Patsy. And then later on, I think that's where we get to page That's where we get to page 53. And it says same thing, find the items. Same thing, basically find the items, and they pull from the defenses. So this is John and Patsy saying, look, we had a bat over there. And so that didn't belong. So basically everything we read here, while we go through the material, I think it's bat for 410. Go to Patsy's, I'm sorry. So when we look at the bat on 410, it looks like a bat. It's on the north side of the butler's kitchen. This is the one that they deny the most. And they're saying that this has nothing. And so they're stating for certain here in their civil lawsuit with Christian Wolf, Chris Wolf, they're stating their lawsuit with him that didn't belong to us. Now, in these interviews in 1998, they weren't certain of whether the bat belonged to them or not. They couldn't tell you. But when they get to the civil lawsuit, they're certain. When it comes down to who's going to pay who or who's going to be sued for what you said about me in your book and so on and so forth, they are clear that that bat did not belong to us, along with a long list of other things that they say didn't belong to them, I believe. But just a long list of things that they say, oh, this doesn't, this isn't mine. Brown cotton fibers on JonBenet's body, the paintbrush, the duct tape, and on the ligature were not sourced and do not match anything in the Ramsey's home. That's not true. So that's coming from, and this is where I find a problem, because when you look at the statement of fact and the plaintiff's statement of material fact, and the plaintiff's statement of material fact, you got 85 and 185. And then you got statement of material fact 181, plaintiff statement of material fact 181. I feel like I was looking somewhere, and we'll touch on that later in terms of the duct tape and what the duct tape had on it and some of these fibers that I had questions about. So we'll touch on that later. I won't dive too much into that. But anyways, the Ramseys are saying the bat doesn't belong to them. That's the biggest thing. And but the carpet fibers are, we know you guys have an aluminum bat. Burke attested to that. But the one that Burke would be attesting to and saying that's mine would, I assume that he would mean out in the yard. I feel like for certain, he wouldn't say, oh, this bat over on the north end is mine. But here's the problem. While Patsy and John are denying that bat that's on the patio, we can't tell you for certain about the second bat. The bat out in the yard could be ours. This bat over here, for certain, in terms of this lawsuit, is not ours. On the patio. Oh, I'm sorry, not on the patio. Over by the north end, by the butler's kitchen. But Burke, when asked about this bat over by the butler's kitchen.
You remember eating pineapple 20 years ago?
There was a flashlight and a baseball bat found at the house, and the investigators thought one of those could have caused JonBenet's head.
JonBenet did suffer a severe 8.5 inches along the right side of her. The things that could have been possibly used were maybe a metal flashlight, baseball bat. The baseball bat was found outside. It also had fibers from the carpet that was in the basement where JonBenet was found.
Did they show you either of those items?
They showed me a picture of the baseball bat, like on the side of the house or something.
Yeah.
Is there anything strange about it being out there to you? Maybe you find it odd that
Burke, to even be more clear and precise, is talking about the baseball bat on the side of the house, not talking about the one out in the yard.
That was my baseball bat. I would normally like leave it out on the patio.
So an intruder could have picked that up on the way in.
So Burke, while John and Patsy said, that ain't ours, they went in a court document and said, that bat is not mine. We didn't buy that bat for Burke. It's not ours. But there were carpet fibers found on that bat from the basement. Burke comes back and says, they showed me a bat over there by that window. Yes. I leave that bat outside. So whether he had one bat or two bats. Yes, I leave that bat outside. That bat is mine. I wouldn't have left it over there, but that bat is mine. So an intruder could have saw it. Guys, we're dealing with an intruder who had time to stage the crime scene. And I'm talking about extensive time to stage the crime scene. We're going to start running into huge problems when we start talking about livor mortis and rigor mortis. I believe, I'm just guessing, we're going to start running into huge problems with this timeline when we start talking about these things in the state of JonBenet's body. Because if this criminal bought their own tape, they bought their own tape to the crime scene, they bought their own rope to the crime scene, and we know that this criminal did not bring their own paintbrush or their own bat to the crime scene. They used what was available at the house. This criminal supposedly came in through the basement window and went out through the basement window. But now it's the case that this criminal may have gone through the side window. I'm confused. May have gone through the side window, or I'm sorry, not the side window, the side door, the butler's kitchen door. That would make sense. But listen to what I'm saying now. That would make sense for the baseball bat to be outside the butler's kitchen, right? That would suggest, if anything, if there was an intruder, that this person went out the butler's kitchen door. Why does that make sense? Because guess where the pins were? The pins were by the phone. It's closer to the breakfast nook, and it's kind of closer to the basement, the grate, the sort of grate area. Yes, sure. But if we're talking about somebody who's running around doing whatever, they write the note and they leave the pad on that little sink close to the back steps. They leave the note on the sink, but then they take the note and they put it, they take the note and they put it on the spiral staircase. And then right down by the spiral staircase, those little stairs, you leave the note on the spiral staircase and you're facing the spiral staircase and you leave the note right there, boom, on the last two steps, you turn to your right, the stairs to the butler's kitchen are right there. You walk down 2 or 3 steps and you can hop down if you're an adult. You hop down, boom, right there on your left. You go right out the butler's kitchen. You throw the bat, you throw the aluminum bat right there, and you take off. Whatever direction you want to go, you take off. And you're out into the sunset. You're good. You can be hiding in the yard. That would make sense. But we're talking about an intruder who, because we talked about before the triangulation of this area. But we're talking about an intruder who snuck in through the window down in the basement, came up, took JonBenet. Now this person came with their own tea glass and came with their own bag of tea. Came through the basement because they knew they would be staking out the Ramsey place and they would be thirsty. And by the time they finally was, well, gosh, JonBenet, I didn't know you guys were going to be home so late. I think I'm thirsty. So he came home. So when they came home, went up and got JonBenet, a stun gun. And then JonBenet woke up and was like, you know what? I think I'm ready to cooperate, and sat her down for some pineapple while he made himself a glass of tea, and went and found himself some tea, made her some pineapple while he went and got himself a glass of tea, went downstairs, did everything in the basement, and then set the whole stage. Like we said, remember, went and got Patsy and Burke's fingerprints for some of the most important key things. The cup, the glass, the pineapple bowl, the glass, the shirt, the pants, even a shirt that was not on JonBenet. He went and found all of that and got the fingerprints for Patsy and Burke. And then came upstairs, wrote the ransom note, didn't leave anything, wrote the ransom note, went and found bought his own cord with him as well, wrote the ransom note, possibly came in through the balcony through JonBenet's room. That's what John said, possibly, or seemed to suggest that possibly came through. I don't know. This person probably, divided himself, and, look, I'm going to go through this JonBenet's balcony. You come in, maybe it was 3 people. You come in through this basement window, and I'll come in through the butler's kitchen. And we're all 3 going to leave out of 3 different parts. So it had to be 3 people. Or we're all going to try to squeeze through this basement window and leave. What? Burke is saying, yeah, that was my bat. It had carpet fibers on it, to suggest that it was down in the basement. And Patsy says, so we have another contradiction here. Patsy says that bat never came in this house. It was never up in the playroom. Nobody bought that bat. Any of those bats. Those bats are not bought in that house, especially this one. None of these bats. Burke is saying, well, somehow, some way that bat ended up inside with carpet fibers on it. And Burke was like, well, that's my bat, and I leave it outside on the ground, on the patio. So the person must have come in by the patio, snuck through, so now you're telling us where the person came through. They must have come in by the patio, grabbed the whatever and said, oh, hey, here's where we can sneak in down by the window, went down in the basement, and left the bat sitting there with carpet fibers on there, so it can get carpet fibers on there. And then came up and threw it outside, or set it nicely outside out here, and then snuck back out down to the basement. That's Burke's bat. Did we find any of Burke's fingerprints on that bat, since it's his and he uses it? Did you find anybody's fingerprints on that bat? Mm-hmm. We're going to touch on the flashlight next time. I'd like to see, hopefully we'll touch on the flashlight. I'd like to see what he says about that. Because John and Patsy have made some statements. So we'll see. But thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe. And thanks for your monetary donations. And I really appreciate you supporting the channel and sticking with me and my investigation of this. And yeah, hope you're well. Hope everything is going great. And until next time, take it easy.